Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to a brand new video on the channel. And today's video, I'm going to be giving you guys a cheat sheet for every single mode and every single map within Ranked right now. So I've been trying to stay away from Ranked a little bit myself, but just for this grind, again, it's taken a long time, a couple of days. So I really appreciate you guys' support with this series. Make sure to like, subscribe, and all of that good stuff. So let me quickly just go through what like first pick, sixth pick means. So when the coin flips over, it will showcase which team gets first and last pick. So by first pick, I mean these brawlers. So if the enemy has first pick, you want to ban some of these first pick brawlers. If you have first pick, you of course want to be picking those brawlers. And then going on to sixth pick, the same kind of goes. So if the enemy has sixth pick and you have first pick, you want to be banning really good sixth pick brawlers. So for example, you know, like assassins, throwers, etc. And if you have sixth pick, just normally ban the best first pick brawlers. Anyway, let's go through to Bounty Dry Season. So starting off with Bounty, very passive game mode. What the meta depends on here a lot of the time is there'll just be a couple of brawlers that can kind of do everything right. And a map like Dry Season, you kind of need like maybe like a wall breaker, a brawler that can at least shoot around walls, maybe like a squeak or something. And you need a brawler that can easily get the blue star at the beginning. It's all about blue star on this map. You get blue star, you hide behind them walls at the back and let the opponents push into you. So that's why I see brawlers like Leon very, very strong with a lollipop drop. You see brawlers like Jim because he can poke around and he can pull. Spike can shoot around the walls. You've got Squeak, like I've already mentioned. Angelo can pierce through walls. You've got Gray that can hook through walls. You've got Brock that can break the walls. You get the gist here. Like I said, you also need a brawler that can collect the blue star pretty quickly. So whether that's like a Mortis, whether it's like Kaze, Jay Young's pretty good at getting that, Mina, etc. So you want a bit of everything. Wall break, kind of, wall peek. You want a bit of aggro to get the blue star and then something in between. So now moving on to Hideout here. Your best picks on your screen right here. So with Hideout, like I mentioned pretty much all of the time, you can get away with going your snipers on the Hideout, probably until you start reaching, I don't know, Legendary 2, open towards Masters, where the meta gets a bit more defined. But for the most part, you can probably go snipers in the hard carry picks. So let's take a look at the best picks. Mortis is insane in this meta still. He's really good to collect the blue star, and just overall his Creature of the Night gadget to go through walls is very strong on Hideout. You've got Leon, who's insane right now. And Glober on a map like this, if you can get Glober, and just any brawler really, but the higher the health brawler, the better, in that left pocket, and especially if the enemy team doesn't have a wall break, is like you get blue star and you just camp in that left top bush. It is such a broken strategy, but just in general, Glober very strong here. Nani, still one of the best snipers in the game, and probably, well, just definitely the most dominant sniper inside of this map. The damage buff Nani received some time ago, making Nani still a super strong brawler. In terms of last picks, you got to be careful of. I think it's just still, I see in pro play like pennies will pop up because there's no wall break or aggression. I see some fangs because too many I don't know, snipers in the same composition. Fang can be really good into that. Maybe like a Meeple again, no wall breaks, and you can use the box gadget to close down the enemy. So again, you got to consider everything. You need a bit of aggression. You need some type of wall break, or at least aggression, to stop the opponents from just cheesing and hiding behind them walls. So now moving on to Layer Cake here. Your best picks on your screen right here. Layer Cake is by far the most aggressive map in the Bounty game mode. You see just pretty much just assassins and just people running all over the place non-stop. So your snipers here aren't going to be the best. If you're going with snipers, it's normally later on in draft, or snipers that can defend himself a bit, you know, like a Gus or a Jay Young. And Pierce can defend himself a little bit with his knockback gadget. Those are the only snipers that are really good. They are Angelo with a jump. In terms of your best picks, Crow's really good here because Crow with a recent projectile speed buff just makes him such a strong asset. Is a great counter to a lot of the aggressive brawlers, and a great counter to Leon, etc. The aggressive brawlers are probably going to be good no matter what here. I think it's just best to try and get those aggressive brawlers, the best ones, picked early on no matter what. You're probably going to face off against some big tank counters, but you just can't afford to let the enemy go those. So like the Bulls, the BBs, the Mortises, Shades, it's obviously going to face some counters. But again, if you or your teammates pick, I don't know, the common mistake I see here a lot on Layer Cake is, I don't know, you pick a Gus and then you pick a Squeak, or you pick like a Pierce and you pick a Squeak. This kind of combination with two really vulnerable brawlers, you're just going to get overrun on Layer Cake, so do bear that in mind. Sixth pick is very, very strong on this map. And lastly for Bounty, we have Shooting Star here. Best picks on your screen right here. So Shooting Star, the meta has adjusted just a little bit with the recent meta. Actually, quite a lot when you take a look at the best picks. Because you've got Sirius, you've got Glober. Again, really open map, so Glober is going to be really good here. And especially because with Glober, you probably want to sit in that left pocket. you can heal the mid brawler, and yeah, it's just really broken. Leon, he's just broken on those maps and modes where you see a lot of snipers. Really, really strong with the buffies. Nanny, it's Nanny, Jean, and Pierce as well. So yeah, the same with Shooting Star. I think with Shooting Star, the meta again is adjusted a little bit as well, because what a lot of people are doing is they get in, like, they're seeing the composition, right, and they're thinking, okay, if I can nab that blue star before them, normally you can just sit back and you can win. So even some strategies in pro play, you know, getting a blue star brawler like Kaze or Mortis, pairing that with maybe like an 8-bit, and you know, they've got to push into you and they can't do anything once 8-bit gets up, etc. So the one thing I will say as well, I don't think throwers are really that good. You do got to make sure that you've got like a half decent mid brawler, so whether that's like a Gray, whether that's an Angelo, whether that's a Jay Young, whether that's Squeak. I mean, Squeak isn't the best, but you know what I mean. Something with a little bit of oomph that can defend themselves in the mid. I mean, it's just your snipers, just picking the best snipers. So now move over to Dribble. Start off with Pinball Dreams with your best picks on your screen right here. So with Dribble in general, it is, again, like a tank fest. In your draft, you've always got to think about Bull and BB, guys. Even if, you know, the pros aren't consistently just picking Bull and BB as a first pick. I know I've got it as first pick here because it's strong on this map, but across all of the maps. So not just picking it straight away, because there are counters to it, but you have to draft with it in mind, because if you just completely forget about these two brawlers in particular in this meta, one or the other will just run through you. So do bear that in mind with your draft, guys. So you can either ban to try and pick BB and Bull, right? Like if you ban a Shelly, that's what a lot of pros do right now. They ban a Shelly and they know that they can first pick Bull and BB pretty safely. There are some soft, well, pretty decent counters to them outside of that, but Shelly's always the best counter. So do bear that in mind. Anyways, let's take a look at the best brawlers. You know, Ems is still Ems, Spike, Crow, really consistent brawlers. Frank is still really good again if you ban the likes of Shelly and or etc. Frank can still be really strong. Nita, really good on a map like this because there's a lot of tanks right now. Nita's pretty good into that. You've got the Otis, you've got Rico to carry. Leon can be pretty dangerous. Chester back in the meta as well. You've got a few wall breaks in there. But this is a very, very heavy 6th pick map. It always has been, because throwers can be pretty dangerous the last pick. Assassins can be dangerous. Tanks can be dangerous as well. So you need a bit of everything in your composition. You do always need that in your draft, but making sure that you got like half decent mid brawler. You probably need a tank counter in there, and you need an aggressive brawler no matter what. Because how else are you going to score if you just play control for the majority of the game? So these are your best picks. So now we're going over to Sneaky Fields, your best picks on your screen again here. So with Sneaky Fields, yes, your last picks are going to be really dangerous with the tanks and everything else, and your first picks are going to be very, very tank counter heavy. So you got like the Crow Spike, still really good. Rico is exceptionally good on Sneaky Fields because there's just so many pockets and areas that Rico can work. Yes, there are counters to Rico, like a Colt, like a Ruffs, but I mean, Ruffs is pretty decent, but I think Colt is weakening in the meta as metas go on. So I won't be too worried about Colt countering your Chester. Again, returning to the meta, very good at countering those tanks. But again, what I will say about Sneaky Fields is you need a couple of brawlers in there that have a bit of presence in the grass. It's all good having like a full control comp, I don't know, like a Spike, a Rico, and I don't know, like a Max or a Meeple or something. But, and it, you know, if the enemies have a couple of tanks, they might just get killed over and over again. But all it takes is you lose position on the grass once, and they can score easily on a map like Sneaky Field. So yeah, do bear that in mind. Again, you've got to be careful of the tanks. I can't stress it enough. You need a lot of tank counters in Brawl. So now moving over to center stage here, your best picks on your screen right here. So with center stage, as you can see, it's a very bushy but scout-based map where I think, well, minimum one brawler has to have some type of scouting capability, whether it's with the vision gear, whether it's multiple projectiles, whether it's poison with Crow. You need scouting on this map, plain and simple. And you need pretty much at all times, you know, one person shooting left, one person shooting right, and then maybe that third person sneaking, helping, pinching, etc. It's all about a pinch fest on this map. So again, your tanks and assassins are going to be pretty dangerous later on in the draft. The brawlers that improve the most in the meta are going to be the likes of Chester again. Leon can be pretty dangerous. Shelly, very strong on Dribble and at sneaking up. So it's all about the bush control and all about your powerful supers and whatever else to make you get easy goals. So now moving over to the final Dribble map in the rotation, which is Triple Dribble. Here, your best picks on your screen right here. So as I always say with Triple Dribble, again, it's a very, very sick pick. Heavy map because the throwers can dominate. Throwers are probably worse than ever right now in the meta, but you have got the introduction of Ziggy, who I think is one of the strongest 6th pick brawler in the game outside of tanks and assassins. So Ziggy's an insane 6th pick. So do bear that in mind in your draft as well, or if you just want to use that as a secret sneaky pick, on Triple Dribble. What we'll say about Ziggy, you can't really pick him earlier than a 6th pick because he still has his counters, you know, like very obvious assassins, etc. So, yeah, as you can see by Triple Dribble, I think it's pretty much a poke fest for the most part. You know, tanks and assassins are good late picks, but you want those brawlers that have good wall peeking capabilities. So that's why I really like Mo here. Mo is exceptional on Triple Dribble. Like Otis, really strong here. Meeple can be very, very dangerous. Your throwers are going to be good here. You want those brawlers that can peek around walls, roofs exceptionally well. And that's just going to allow you to gain control of the map. Okay, so now we're moving on to Gem Grab. This is the featured game mode for this season. So we have a couple of extra Gem Grab maps in there. So Crystal Arcade is the first one. I haven't got the chance to play it too much, but this should be here and about some meta in terms of Gem Grab. So again, you've got the Leons who can be very sneaky, especially with his current bug, with his Lollipop drop, makes him a very hard brawler to keep on top of. Crow being Crow. Pierce, I probably realized to move over it a little bit in this graphic, but it's still Pierce at the end of the day. And if you can pair a couple of, well, one wall breaker with Pierce, then he will dominate on a map like Crystal Arcade. It only takes literally a handful of wall breaks, and the map is very opened up for him. Glober the same as well. So it's very typical with Crystal Arcade. You want a map, you want a mid that can defend themselves a little bit against aggression. So you see that with Janet with jumps. You see that with Pam with the scrap sucker gadget. Jay Young can defend himself a little bit. He's still the same with like Gus, Meeple. You want that type of mid inside of Crystal Arcade. You then want probably a tank counter or something with a bit of range, whether that's an Otis, whether that's an Amber, whether it's a Ruffs to open up the map, whether it's a Colt that can break open the map, Rico, etc. And then you always want something aggressive. You want like a Lily to go onto the gem carry. You want an Ali. You want a Mortis to pressure. So you always need a bit of pressure so your gem carrier can collect those gems. It's always the same in Gem Grab. Next up, we have Double Swoosh here. Your best picks right here on the screen. So Double Swoosh is a very, well, not toxic map. It's quite fun, but it's very sneaky, right? There's a lot of plays that can happen where if, for example, if an enemy gets into your left bush, it can be really, really hard to gain back control. So let's go through the best picks. Otis is insane on this map because you put him down the left-hand lane, and it's really hard to push into an Otis that has vision gear, that has the fat splatter gadget. He's just the best tank counter right now. In terms of your mid-brawlers are very flexible on Double Swoosh, guys. I see very often in pro play, the non-generic mid will be a mid-brawler on this map because you can just float in and around. You can easily interchange with your teammates a lot of the time. So that's why you see quite often like Chester as a mid in Gem Grab right now because, again, there's so many good tanks in this meta. You see like Sandy as a mid on this map. You see, I don't know, trying to think of some Charlie like as a good mid on this map. You see non-generic ones. Poker can be pretty solid one. Bo as well at the lower ranks. So yeah, in terms of your lane brawlers, you know, Amber's insane. Great counter to a lot of the meta brawlers. If Crow is banned, you know, good at countering Sandy, good at countering Tara, and good at opening up the grass. And then late picks as well. Late picks probably aren't as strong as you'd think here because there's so many good tank counters in Double Swoosh, but still you got to be careful of the Mortises and the Allies. So next up we have Gem 4. As I always say with Gem 4, well, here are your best picks on your screen, but with Gem 4 it is a very toxic map because there's a lot of sneaking. You've always got to be wary of where players, well, where the enemy brawlers can be at any point on the map because just at one click of a finger, the game can just change because I don't know, a Bull sneaks in behind or a Tara sneaks in behind or any assassin, tank, or any powerful super brawler has sneaked in behind. So, as I always say, I think control isn't good at all inside of this map. There's probably a handful of brawlers that are okay, but it's all about your aggression in tank towers. The brawlers that can turn around the game in a flash. So, that's why as well, you've got to consider that with your gem carrier, you need someone that's pretty safe. So again, you see your non-generic gem carrier brawlers here. You see a lot of like Crow. Well, Crow's always been a good gem carrier, but he can get away with his jump. You've got Poco, who can survive a lot more with his supers now. You've got even, like I said, Chester as a mid. A lot of Janet in the mid. You see Otis played as a mid here as well. Meeple with the gadget that can push them back. You see these safe gem carriers, but it's all about the aggression. It's all about trying, well, the biggest tip here is in Gem Grab in general, always to ban as many assassins as possible because it just makes the game so messy. But there's just so many assassins in the game right now, it's like impossible to keep on top of. So make sure you've got some assassin counters in there. Next up, we're moving on to Hard Rock Mine. Here are your best picks on your screen right here. So with Hard Rock Mine, I think the lower you are in elo, the better Rico is. I mean, Rico's still pretty good at a high level, but he's super toxic on this map. You've still got your best picks with Glober, Crow, and Sirius. I will say that probably the higher you are, the Glober is probably better. he's probably a lot harder to make work at the lower end because I think you just need more damage, etc. So do bear that in mind in terms of your ranks and your gameplay. In terms of your general brawlers that are pretty good as a lane, again, it's the same concept as always in Gem Grab. You want that a tank, assassin, brawler you want to pick it up towards the end of a draft, but you always want one of those in the draft no matter what. Even if the common mistake I see a lot of the time is that people will be scared, even if, well, if they go like Shelly Otis, it's obviously you don't want to go a tank into that, but even if they go Otis or Shelly, I would still try and pick an assassin into that, right? Because you can just switch matchup a lot of the time in Gem Grab. You can still go after the gem carrier, but it's always vital that you need some type of aggression no matter what, because especially in a game like Brawl Stars with hypercharges, with buffies, there's so many times that you can just turn the game over pretty quickly. In the past, it was never before like that. Control was always the game, but now it's just all about making the game as messy as possible. So bear that in mind when you're drafting. You want a safe gem carrier, you want a tank counter / high damage dealer in there, and then you want some aggression. Next up, we have Rustic Arcade. Here, your best picks right here on the screen. Rustic Arcade is all about your not aggressive brawlers. Your longer range brawlers are going to be best here. And then again, that's tied with a last pick Assassin. Assassin's still good here because your generic tank counters aren't going to be really used too much here because, you know, your Shellys, your Chesters are going to be outranged pretty easily here. So we start to see the more longer range tank counters come into play here. So that's why you see, again, Otis, good range. You see like Amber can poke at a distance. You see Lola's starting to come in. You see Charlie as a good mid or a lane because she's a pretty decent tank counter. You see, again, like Colt can actually be a pretty good counter to tanks here because of his speed loader gadget. You see that a lot here. So yeah, you just want a bit of range. You want to make sure that you're picking the best range brawlers, and then last pick brawlers, you want those assassins still. Again, it's Rustic Arcade. There's hardly any draft into this. It's just all about your matchups and all about picking the best range brawlers. And lastly, for Gem Grab, we have Undermine here. Your best picks on your screen right here. So Undermine is probably my least favorite Gem Grab map because I say every single time with Undermine, it's all about the first engagement, picking a brawler that's going to do pretty well in those lane matchups, and then if you've got a range brawler and you win your first lane engagement, you're just going to spawn trap. You're just going to keep that lane for the entirety. So just a quick tip in terms of gameplay for this map. If you lose your first interaction, don't completely like avoid the lane that you just came down. But it's more than likely best to maybe switch your focus onto the mid or on the left lane instead, because you can just play like one side of the map on Undermine, because it's pretty hard without a pinch on this map to gain control of the grass again. Look, there's so much grass, there's so much unpredictability. If you've not got vision gear on, or if you've not got the right brawler, you know, for example, if you feed Tara Super, how are you supposed to push into a Tara Super without a pinch or something like that? So yeah, just bear that in mind. Again, yeah, assassins are going to be insanely strong. You want a gem carrier that can defend themselves against all of those aggro picks. Control isn't really the name of the game here. It's just all about aggression. So now let's move over to Heist. So Heist is probably the hardest game mode to make work with your randoms, because it does take a bit of coordination. It does take a bit of brain cells, and yeah, a lot of randoms don't have the brain cells. So starting off with Bridge Too Far. As you can see, Bridge Too Far, the draft has definitely switched up a lot on this map. Your snipers are going to be great here, but again, you still want a bit of everything. I think your assassins and tanks aren't like the best, but they can work if you go too heavy on the sniper focus. So again, you've got to bear in mind, you need a bit of everything. So the first brawler I always recommend going is like a decent sniper, because you need a hard carry pick, but snipers are just always going to be good in their lanes. You want a brawler that's got some range, but again can counter the aggression. So that's why 8-bit is becoming at the forefront of the Bridge Too Far meta again, because he's got good damage, but he can also defend himself pretty well against all of those aggressive ideas. And then you want to maybe think about the Kazes, the Melodies, the BB's last picks. You want to think about that in your draft as well. So that's why you've probably seen a lot of 8-bit now, because BB is a very common last pick on Bridge Too Far, even though it's very open. So 8-bit can really deal with that. Again, you want a brawler you want multiple brawlers that can deal a lot of damage on the safe as well. You want a defensive brawler, you want an aggressive brawler at least. Yeah, you got to consider everything here. It's a hard one to draft on. Next up, we have Hot Potato here. Best picks on your screen right here. So in the Heist meta, this is the only base race map, because a lot of tanks can really work here. I am starting to see again like too many tank counters on this map. I'm seeing a lot of control actually in this map, funny enough, because there's so many great tank counters in this meta. So Crows are going to be good, Ems is still fantastic, BB and Bull are just good no matter what. Again, there are other counters to those brawlers, but what you often find is just, you know, BB slips through once, Bull slips through once with hypercharge, and they can just get so much control and so much damage onto the safe. So try with this map as much as possible. If you're running into a bad matchup, just try and use the length of the map as much as possible. You know, sneak around the side. If you're a big damage dealer, you know, sneak around the side. Your berry is a lot worse in this meta than previously because berry's good, right? But if you run a berry, it's very likely the enemy team's just going to run it down against you and try and end the game quicker than you can deal damage. Again, in terms of this map, you got to be worried about a chuck a little bit, but it's just purely about damage and pressure. Now moving over to Kaboom Canyon here, your best picks on your screen right here. So with Kaboom Canyon, I will say it plays very similar to Safe Zone in terms of the picks. You know, Chuck's always going to be your best pick. Pierce is always going to be insane because it's a super open map and he's pretty good at defending and just overall control of the grass. Crow's insane. Colt, one of the best heist brawlers. Glober and Sirius are still going to be pretty good. So again, the same literally applies to Kaboom Canyon. You need the same kind of trio in heist in every single situation. So you need one brawler that is like a defender. So whether that's like an Otis, a Spike, I'm trying to go through the best ones here. Crow can be like a hybrid. You need something that can defend pretty well here, whether it's like an Ems and Amber. I know, like I said, you need some big damage. You need an aggressive brawler. Again, better later on in the draft, but you've got the likes of Melody. You want Chucks. You want, even if Crow's your brawler that gets offensive damage, whether it's even a Colt. You want some high damage in your composition. Your Karzeys, your Lilies, your Bulls, your BBs, your Darryls, etc. Miko last pick. And then you want a good in-between brawler, like a good clean-up brawler where, you know, they've got some good range and they can also defend and they can also get some good attack damage. So again, that could be like your Amber as well. That could be like your Byron as a support brawler, you know, Bella's a support brawler, whether that's your Charlie as a defender support brawler. Lola's really good at defending and attacking. It's all about finding your perfect three. And the same exact theory goes with Safe Zone as well. You want a bit of everything in here no matter what. Even on Safe Zone, it's pretty hard to play those aggressive brawlers, but there are a lot of chances to make aggressive plays on this map because it's all about trying to get to that right top pocket with an aggressive brawler, whether that's a Kaze, whether that's a Carl, whether it's anything like that. So I will say on this map, a very dangerous pick is Penny. So if you've got first pick, probably end up banning Penny because Penny's such a good 2-3 pick. There's not a lot of good Penny counters out there in Safe Zone, and she can set up a turret and be very dangerous. So that's like my golden pick in terms of Safe Zone, a really good one. Again, you want a bit of everything here. So I won't really say you need like an absolute defender on Safe Zone, but you do need some quick damage. So that's why I love the Otis, Spike, why I'm like an 8-bit a lot more. You need someone that can, you know, if a Melody or Kaze gets on your safe, you can remove them quickly, because if you don't remove them quickly, they will just get rid of a shield pretty fast. So again, later on in draft, your Assassin's tank's going to be pretty good. Your Melodies, your Kaze is always going to be pretty strong, whether that's, again, like a Carl getting into the corner. It's the same type of brawlers that are always good on Safe Zone. Okay, so now moving on to Hot Zone, starting off with Dueling Beetles here. Your best picks on your screen right here. So with Hot Zone, it's all about finding a balance between a lot of different things, but at the forefront of it, it's always about trying to collect as much time as possible, right? You don't want 3 squishy brawlers on the same composition. You don't want brawlers that are very vulnerable to aggressive brawlers on the zone. So again, you don't want, I don't know, too many brawlers like Meeple, or too many bows on your team, or too many brawlers that can just not deal enough damage quickly to those brawlers trying to push you on the zone. So again, it is about control over time. So you wouldn't like that bit of a controller. You want a brawler that's pretty dominant with a super. So whether that's like Lou to shut out the opponents, whether it's a Chester with his supers, whether it's Bo with his mines, whether it's trying to think with Pam with the turret behind. In terms of Dueling Beetles, again, there are some really dangerous last picks, whether that's like a tank or whether that's like a thrower. But again, there's like some really good synergies here with Poco. Finks is really dominant here. You've got your grey tank combinations. You've got Lou to shut down the grey tank combinations. So there's a lot of really solid picks here. So now moving over to Open Business here, your best picks on your screen right here. So with Open Business, I think the meta has definitely steered away from control inside of this map, because it's just so easy to be aggressive and get control of this map. So yeah, although Pierce is really strong on this map, like even the pros do find it difficult to manage everything with the Pierce. So again, the last picks here are very, very dangerous, probably the most dangerous out of all of the Hot Zone maps, because Throwers are going to be very dominant. You know, your Ziggy's, your Barley's going to be very strong. And then your Kenji's last picks, you know, your aggressive brawlers last picks are just insane. I don't think I included Mortis. Oh no, I did include Mortis there, you know. I just remind back to whenever I watch Foot play, they really like their roughs to open up the map. They really like their Spike here. They really like, you know, the Mortis, the Kenji, because you need a bit of everything, right? You need a bit of an aggressive brawler to apply some pressure. You need them shut down with a lot of damage, and then you need a bit of control maybe. Again, you've got to be careful of the Poco Grey composition. It's very cheesy. There's a bit of rock, paper, scissors going on, you know, with Luke countering the tanks, Grey, Frank to counter the Finks, Poco again also to help with that. The lower down you are, the better the brawlers like Bo's gonna be to just keep control. So yeah, a lot to go through here. Next we have Parallel Plays, probably my most hated ranked map in the rotation right now, because it's heavily dependent on pinching with your teammates, and it's just a very toxic map because with a really good player that can play a great assassin, he can just get so much value on the right side. So as I always say here with this map, it is all about sending, or you want the aggressive brawler on the right lane, defensive brawler on the left lane, and then depending on which side is struggling the most, you can either help your brawler gain control on the top side, or you can help your defensive brawler. So again, you want the great defensive options here. So it's going to be great shutdown brawlers like a Spike, like a Throw on the left side can be pretty good, Meeple, Otis. So you've got to be careful, because as a last pick, the assassins can be very dangerous, and especially the ones that have good mobility. So again, like Kenji's, like your Mortises, like Hank has got good mobility, but just really good at pressure. You know, those types of brawlers can be very dangerous, you know, Lily, etc., to apply pressure. I think throwers are really strong here because you've got that unbreakable wall there. It's always hard to push into a thrower, but then again, it's really hard to push into a really strong defensive brawler like an RT or a Spike or a Crow that can defend really well. So it's about balancing both things. Strong defender, strong assassin, and then just go from there. So now moving on to the final hot zone map, we have a Ring of Fire. So with Ring of Fire, as you can see on your screen right here, that, as I always say with Ring of Fire, you need like a pretty decent range in the middle. You need a brawler that can maybe flank around the outside, and just mainly focus on the middle is what I always say with Ring of Fire. So we'll say Ring of Fire. Again, there is a bit of rock, paper, scissors going on here in terms of like what your strong brawlers are in the middle. So you've got Finks, which is good into everything, but then Finks can get countered by like Grey and Poco cheese compositions, and then you've got like your longer range brawlers that are really good at shutting that down as well. You've got the V's, your Lus, etc. So yeah, do bear that in mind. Globa is very strong on this map, but we have seen a bit of like, I don't know, Pam to counter that, for example, or a Byron with the Malays. Bo is very, very strong at the lower levels, but is getting found out at the high levels a little bit. Yeah, that's really about it. I mean, last picks aren't really that dangerous. There's a couple of good last picks. I think maybe like Mortis, Kenji, Penny, and Squeak are going to be your best last picks, but overall it's just about control here. I don't think there's a lot of aggression. It's just all about trying to have good supers, have good brawlers that can get onto the zone. So now moving over to Knockout here, your best picks on your screen right here. So with Bells Rock, the meta's shifted a little bit here with Kit returning to the Knockout meta. Absolutely, Kit is just really insane with any type of tank right now, and I think people are really heavily underestimating Kit in Knockout, guys. You got to try it more, because even with this stun duration nerf, I think it's made Kit actually a bit better. And the Yarn Ball's easy to hit, more healing. Yeah, okay, I won't talk about Kit anymore. Rico is insane here. You guys should know that already since the buff a couple of updates ago. Pierce is insane. Jean is always a reliable brawler in Knockout. I think you can go Jean no matter what. I think there's hardly any brawler that counts as Jean in Knockout. So just go Jean. I know it's pretty boring just to go Jean everywhere, but he's just a perfect Knockout brawler. Leon, again, really, really strong here. So what we'll say about Bells Rock is that I really like the snipers that have more health on this particular map, because if you learn like your presence and the amount of health you have, you can push up. So for example, you know, a lot of pros love RT because with RT has a lot of health. You can push your enemies back eventually. When the gas closes in, you will literally win the game just through map positioning. So that's why Pipers and Mandys, they might be okay at low level, but once you get above Masters, you will struggle to win with those types of brawlers. So do bear that in mind. Next up, we have Flare and Phoenix. Here, your best picks on your screen right here. So with Knockout, with this map in particular, it's very cheesy, and I'm always struggle to completely know how to counter or how to play this map. And still to this day, it's just a very annoying map. It's just all about camping, and especially with this map, I think Mandy's insane, even at high level. Squeak's insane because, well, with Mandy, it's very easy, right? Like, you're never going to be in 1 or 2 choke points sitting in the grass, so Super can find a lot of value. Same goes to Squeak. You know you're going to be in 1 or 2 bits of the area of the map. His gadget wind-up is really good for pressure, etc. Again, you can be like this good sneaky last picks. I think last picks here are more dangerous than people realize, you know, like a Daryl, because people go like multiple squishy brawlers, so Daryl can be good here. But it's probably the one map he's good on in the game still, with his hypercharge, just being able to farm it easily. You know, you got your Brocks to open up the map. I don't know, it's just a whole lot of nonsense on this map. Next up, we have New Horizons. Here, your best picks on your screen right here. So New Horizons is all about mainly taking the best range brawlers and making sure that you've got something that can cover your bases in case the enemy goes like a cheesy last pick, like a Buster, like a Doug, like a Hank or a Thrower. You need at least one Brawl Breaker in your composition or an aggressive brawler. So yeah, your long range brawlers are always going to be better here, and that's just the name of the game inside of Knockout, just picking your best longer range brawlers. I don't know, it's a very boring game mode to me. It's very easy in draft. It's just the same brawlers over again. I don't think there's much draft process or much out drafting to be had. It's just other snipers countering other snipers with the occasional last pick control or assassin pick. So moving on to the final map, we have Out in the Open. So again, it is very much about picking your best, I don't know, snipers, your long range brawlers, your control brawlers, and just kind of battling it out. But again, being wary of last picks on Out in the Open, because again, like Fang is actually a pretty good last pick here. You've got the likes of Ali that can be pretty strong, Kit, Daryl. Got to be a little bit careful that you've not just got 3 snipers that have no pure damage. So again, you know, the Brock's going to be great to open up that back wall. Andrew's going to be great because he can just pressure down that left lane straight away. Squeak's going to be great with his gadget. Junior Leon's always going to be pretty strong. Byron's going to be prepared pretty well easily here. Bell's going to be good for pressure with the reverse polarity gadget. Bo can be pretty good as well. So yeah, it's all about kind of sneaking in that mid-bush area, just finding your kills, getting the pressure, making sure that you push the enemies back, because again, if they're forced back into spawn, you can literally win the game from that alone. So that's going to be it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed this one. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. This video took me so long to make, so I really appreciate you guys' support with this one. And yeah, see you guys next time. Bye-bye.